Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada, we love you. In Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more. The good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful December the 23rd, 2019. Grande Deportes. Big C is out on vacation in travel mode for the holidays. I think I just found out who Santa Claus is. It's amazing as toys are being flown around the country, actually around the universe. And there's a big guy running around with a big red bag. Yes, Santa Claus is actually black. Everybody knows it's all landscape in Africa. And Big C Sports also doing his Santa Claus theme of vacation. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. So Big C, I think I spoiled it. You are Santa Claus. If not, you play one on TV. Be careful going through different chimneys. You don't want to have anyone called 911 on that, Big C. I think it's all fair. I do have a relative of mine one time. He dressed up to play Santa, and he went to a school, and some of the school kids, they requested that he was Santa. They didn't want to sit on his lap because they'd never seen a black Santa. But Santa's for everybody, if you understand that. Everybody's able to play Santa. I just think that's so funny. It brings me to laugh. I want to say you can follow Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic or Santa, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, Big C Now. Now you can follow Big C Sports on Roku TV, Fire TV, Apple TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. It was supposed to be for Christmas. It's actually Christmas is a couple of days early, Big C, but we'll take it. Really appreciate that. And I want to talk more about that too, coming up on why I'm so happy about Big C Sports. A holiday gift. Everybody go out and do what you love in life. We also give out a lot of respect for our military, our national military hotline. We pay homage to them. People going through issues, especially for the holidays. Not everything's happy in everybody's life, but if people are having some issues, they can go on the National Suicide Hotline, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or they can text 838-255. That's 838-255, and they can get some help. So as far as bringing up the opportunities of Big C Sports now being on Roku TV, want to also mention iHeartRadio gave a notice that Big C Sports, one of the top podcasts on their network. But so for people who are looking at how to find Big C Sports, and if you want to get on and find out where you can find the network, just go to the iHeartRadio app. When you get into Roku TV, you just find the device. It's supported by Roku TV devices. It has to be that. Select the channel icon on the Roku home screen, and you'll see the iHeartRadio app. And then go on to podcast, you'll see the Big C Sports Podcast, and you'll hear that on iHeartRadio. And on Roku TV for Big C Sports, also with Xfinity, Comcast, same thing, Apple Podcast. And so I really just appreciate that, because when you're starting something, it's not always easy, and you don't always get there as fast as you want to. But I can truly say, when we started Big C Sports on Salem Media back in 2015, Northern California, it was just that one radio station, and there's 112 stations, I believe, that they're part of on Salem Media, and then going from there, starting their own platform, and then being picked up, through Spreaker.com, and then on to iHeartRadio, and then Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, so many other podcasts. And now we know streaming is taking away a lot of the networks' cable. People are cutting the cable. In fact, there's even competition in streaming when you have Netflix, which carries a lot of households Well, Disney's coming on with their own streaming platform, and I think Netflix has lost a lot of consumers to Disney streaming. You can watch Disney's movies, and who can compete with Disney? How about that? Big C Sports coming to your local Disney channel, Big C. First episode, Big C is playing Santa Claus all over the universe. Really appreciate that. So, Big C, sometimes we talk about things like the $100 million, like showing up on iHeartRadio podcast, like coming to Roku TV, Apple TV, and Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. And it's happening. So, really appreciate that. I want to get on to something that happened over the weekend. To me, I love the fact that, football is in the heart of things. I want to give out the rankings for the National Football League because we've seen a lot of things happening. Even Beast Mode, this one talk that Beast Mode may be signing a contract with the Seattle Seahawks. I know he actually met with Pete Carroll today, this Monday, the 23rd. And if Beast Mode comes back, it doesn't mean he's going to be the Beast Mode that left. It's not going to be the Beast Mode that played for the Seahawks back in the day. It's not going to be the Beast Mode that played for the Oakland Raiders when John Gruden came back. But if you understand the fact that he will bring a lot of more energy, not that they need it, the 12th man is pretty amazing up in Seattle. But if Beast Mode does come back, I think he'll bring a lot more attention to what's going on up in the Seattle Seahawks area. But I want to get on, I know we have tonight's game with Minnesota and Green Bay, and that should be an amazing matchup. Green Bay is at Minnesota. It's in the Dome, so you might look at Minnesota getting the advantage, although Kirk Cousins has not won a game on Monday Night Football, but some things will change, and it may change tonight. We don't know, but we'll find out. I'll cover that a little bit later. In the NFL, the AFC, in the Eastern Conference, congratulations again. Not that they need congratulations, but the New England Patriots, they're doing it again. They're 12-3. They had a win over the weekend over Buffalo. Close game. I'll touch that coming up a little bit later. Also, so they clinched the conference. Buffalo, they're also a playoff team. They are 10-5 on the season. And if you look at what the Patriots are doing, they scored 196 points. So they'll go over the 400-point mark in their final game of the regular season. They've also given up 198, and it's a very stout defense. Still the best defense in the NFL when you look at points, scored against. They're the only team in the NFL that has not given up 200 points. And here we are, they've played 15 games. That's incredible. The only team, I'll say it again, and we say defense wins championships, and everybody is looking to pay quarterbacks and make quarterbacks the first-round draft pick, and they're following quarterbacks and saying we got to get a quarterback and pay him $100 million in order to win games. The New England Patriots, the 2019 version, Big C, they've only given up 198 points. I think that's phenomenal. They're the only team in the NFL that hasn't given up at least 200 points on defense. So when you think about how difficult it would be to win another NFL title, if defense wins championships and Tom Brady's getting old, they're the only defense that hasn't given up 200 points so far in the NFL. Buffalo, again, 10-5. The Jets are 6-9 on the season with an upset win over the Steelers, but not really when you look at how banged up the Steelers are. Miami Dolphins, they are 4-11. In the AFC South, you have the Houston Texans. Texans are 10-5 on the season, and they're followed by Tennessee, that's 8-7. Indianapolis is 7-8 on the season. Jacksonville is 5-10 on the season. Look at what Houston has done. They've scored 364 points. They've given up 350. They can win a shootout, but they can't win it if they're not shooting their load either. The Texans are a good team, but they give up a lot of points also at 350. When you look at what New England's done, they've given up 152 points more than the New England Patriots. Imagine if they meet up in a playoff game. I think the numbers sometimes tell the story of what could happen. As we go to the AFC North, everybody's high on the Baltimore Ravens. I am too. And when you wonder why, just think about this. The Baltimore Ravens, in all the talk about not having a quarterback that's an NFL prototype quarterback, and everybody's saying that you can get a read on him, he can't keep running the ball, and is he really a good passer? 36 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, Lamar Jackson. But it's not just him. Baltimore Ravens, they're 13-3. That's the number one record in the NFL. They've scored 503 points. They're the only team in the NFL through week 15 to score 500 points. 503 points. They've only given up 272 points. So they scored 503. They've given up 272. And that's a team, if you imagine seeing them matching up with the New England Patriots in a second appearance, which would be a playoff game. I don't know who your favorite is, a defense or offense. I know people say you can't keep fooling Bill Belichick, but a team that can come into the season and we still have a game to play. I know they're going to rest a lot of their starters in the final game of the season against the Steelers, but you score 503 points. Think about how difficult that is. They've outscored the New England Patriots on offense. They've played the same amount of games, but they've outscored them by 107 points. That's incredible. I'll say it again. Through 15 games, Baltimore Ravens have outscored the New England Patriots by 107 points. So that's a team that has a perception of being a run team, a one-dimensional team. Whatever they are, they've done it better than anybody else in the league. So looking forward to seeing them in the playoffs. I look at the AFC West. They're still talking the Oakland Raiders having a chance to make the playoffs. I don't see that. If they just had a lot going against them, they're moving out of town. They had a win down in Los Angeles against the Chargers. It's the last time the LA Chargers will ever lose a game to the Oakland Raiders, because next year the Raiders will be the Las Vegas Raiders. So there's a lot of things that you could put in the record books. And also the Chargers when they came to Oakland, they were a Thursday night game. It's the last Thursday night game played in Oakland. It was also against the Chargers. So a lot of things going on with those two franchises. Kansas City, they are 11-4, had a beatdown over the Bears last night on national television. They scored 420 points in the season, giving up 290. So they're still formidable, especially Kansas City's defense. They're playing a lot better football than they played, I think, in the earlier part of the year. When Patrick Mahomes was injured, the Chiefs seemed a bit more vulnerable. I don't know what it is, but now that he's healthier now, maybe they're not on the field as much. But I really like the way Kansas City is playing. Especially, you have to have a good defense if you're going to win in the playoffs. Oakland Raiders, they go to 7-8. I know Derek Carr was saying that he had a good game also against the Chargers. And the Raider fans showed up down in Carson, California. And Carr had a good game. We'll see if he stays on, if he's in John Gruden's, if they're on the same page. I don't know. A lot of people are saying that Gruden wants somebody else. I still like Carr, but if he can't stay with the Raiders, maybe shake hands with the LA Chargers staff. They're going to be in the new stadium in Inglewood. Denver Broncos, they're 6-9 on the season, playing a little bit better, but they've lost a lot of close games too. They've scored 266 on the season in 15 games. They've given up 301. Not a good sign when you give up more points than you score, and they've done that. The LA Chargers, 5-10 on the season. In this Charger team, you love the lightning bolts on the side of their helmet. It's amazing how good the uniforms can look in that powder blue. They scored 316 points, giving up 314. So that's the AFC standings before I run down what happened with the NFL. And the NFC, Philadelphia Eagles. How about them Eagles? I'm sorry, that should have been how about the Cowboys, according to a lot of people in Texas. But the Eagles got a win over the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not saying that they're a better team than the Dallas Cowboys, but they just scored more points than the Dallas Cowboys. And I know everybody wants to make their excuses for the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott was injured. They had to shoot him up before the game. How often do you hear people saying they're going to shoot him up before a game to numb whatever was ailing with him? We know he had the injury with his hands, but everybody's hurt this time of year. You did have a lot of drop balls. I think they had 6 drop passes that could have been, even if they caught 4 of those 6 drops, they could have had a better showing. Ezekiel Elliott was banged up, had about, I think, 13 to 14 carries. Didn't help them, but I'll cover that later. Philadelphia, they scored 351 points on the season. They've given up 337, and they'll probably lose to Eli Manning and the Giants in their final game. I know that would be kind of ironic, but it's Eli's last game. They're going to play it in the Meadowlands. You don't think there's some good cooking going on in the Southern District of New York when they got the Eli Manning can go out a winner or he can go out with a losing record. We'll just see what happens. It would be great theater. If Eli knocks the Eagles out of the playoffs, that would be if the Cowboys were to beat the Redskins. And that would be 2 games. They have a lot on the line still. Like nobody really wants to win that division. If the Eagles win, they're in. If the Eagles lose to the Giants and the Cowboys beat the Redskins, then the Cowboys are in. So we'll see what happens there. Dallas Cowboys 7-8 on the season. They've scored 387 points. They've only given up 305. So their defense is better than the Eagles. They've scored more points on offense than the Eagles. So when people say the Philadelphia Eagles are a better team, they're not. Dallas has been banged up, and Philly they've been banged up too at the receiver position. So everybody has an excuse, but you can either get wins or you can get excuses, but you can't get both. I heard a good old coach tell me one time back in the day. So we'll see what happens. There's still a lot of drama in the NFC East. The New York Giants, they can be spoiler makers in the Big Apple or in the Meadowlands. They're 4-11. They've scored 324 points. They've given up 417. That's a lot of points to give up. Eli Manning, Saquon Barkley, they can pull it off. They took the Eagles to overtime at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia just a couple of weeks ago. This is a team that has a chance. Win one for Eli. When Pat Bowen, when he made that statement when the Broncos beat the Packers in Super Bowl 33 down in San Diego. San Diego Stadium, Qualcomm, not good enough to host an NFL team, but they're good enough to host a couple of Super Bowls. But Bowen said, "This one's for John." So if the Mara family stands up, will they say, "This one's for Eli"? There's a chance. It's all there. The writing's on the wall. Jerry Jones still has an opportunity, whether Garrett stays there or not, and he'll probably find another place to go. There's so much talk. Urban Meyer, there's talk about him going to Dallas. Who knows? Jerry Jones will bring on whoever will listen to him, so that would tell you what happens there. Atlanta, they're 6-9 on the season, and this is a team that got a big win against San Francisco, and it kind of propelled them to have more confidence. They're 6-9 on the season, not going anywhere. They scored 353 points, giving up 370. And then you look at Carolina, they're 5-10 on the season. They scored 330 points, giving up 428 in the NFC North. Big game tonight. Green Bay Packers on the road. They're 11-3. They scored 330 points, giving up 283. Discount double check Aaron Rodgers. Will he shine tonight against Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings? This crowd will be amazing. In fact, the game is already underway. Don't give out scores here, but just can't wait to see what happens in that game. Will Kirk Cousins get his first win on Monday night? I don't know. The Vikings are 10-4 right now. They are scored 378 points on the season, giving up 259, followed by Chicago that laid an egg. If you can a bear lay an egg? I don't think a bear can lay an egg, Big C, but I know they'll eat an egg if they find one. The Bears were in hibernation early with a 26-3 beat down to the Kansas City Chiefs. And then Detroit, they're just waiting for the season to be over. 3-11-1 on the season. They scored 321 points, giving up 400. And this is where all the drama, it all starts next week in the Great Northwest. Seattle Seahawks, they're at home, but that's where they've lost their games. They only lost one game on the road this year. That was at the Coliseum to the Rams. But they've had so many banged-up players, they're bringing beast mode back. Will he sign his contract? I believe he's going to. Why would he turn down the money? They're going to pay him some money to come up there and play at least one game. If they win it, they'll keep him on the roster in the playoffs. But they got to win the NFC West or they'll be traveling. This team has scored 453 points with Russell Houdini Wilson. They've given up 289, but they've had so many injuries and then losing Gordon. Just a lot of chemistry was off yesterday. I thought they would have had a better game against Arizona than they did, but they did not. So we'll see what happens when San Francisco comes to town. Ironically, the last time the 49ers went up there and lost a playoff game, beast mode was actually planned for the Seattle Seahawks. I remember Colin Kaepernick was the quarterback, and it was a pass to the corner of the end zone, and we've heard all the talk about Richard Sherman. And you're gonna try me with a player like Crabtree? I remember that talk. Well, Beast Mode was on the team and on the field then, and he may just be there again. I don't know what's going to happen. San Francisco looks to be, I give them the edge just because they have more healthier players. I think Kittle's amazing. Garoppolo, if he doesn't throw 40 yards downfield, just do the dink and dunk like the West Coast offense. If he's throwing 10 to 15-yard passes, throwing under the secondary, then the 49ers are good on the offensive side of the ball. But when they try to stretch the field, you get lucky at times, but that's when he's throwing most of his picks too. If they keep it a short passing game and run the ball, they may just go up there and get a win if they don't have the turnovers. 49ers 11-4. They scored 384 points, giving up 372. And then the Rams are out of it. The Rams lost a heartbreaker to the 49ers on Saturday, and they fall to 8-7. 363 points scored offensively, giving up 340 defensively. And it goes right back to the team that have the Super Bowl hangovers. There's always that thought the team that loses the Super Bowl has a hangover. Unless you're the New England Patriots, because we know they're always in the playoffs. The Arizona Cardinals, say it ain't so. Hundley playing good football for the Cardinals. They're 5-9-1. They scored 337 points, giving up 411. And so everybody knows that when you play NFL football, it's about how you finish, not necessarily how you begin the season. And so with all the talk about what happens in the world of NFL football, I'm going to do the Big C rundown for NFL. I just think it's amazing. I also want to finish up with some talk, a couple of college bowl games. And I want to close the show talking about some high school football games that I appreciate, but I really don't think it's fair. Houston Texans, 23. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 20. The Texans, they claim the AFC South, but think about it. They were legitimately outgained 435 to 229 yards. That's not good. They averaged 2.4 yards per play fewer than the Buccaneers. But when you have a player like Winston, who just has to figure out how to throw the ball to his own players, he was 24-48, 335 yards, 1 touchdown. He had 4 interceptions. You can't keep doing that. And I know everybody has their own opinion about what's going on. I don't think they should get rid of him. Just have him keep working with the errands. I think it's just a matter of time to figure it out. Perryman was Winston's leading receiver. He had 7 catches of the 100. Actually, he had 7 catches, 102 yards. They targeted him 12 times. And I just want to say Winston's sole touchdown was to Justin Watson. He caught 5 catches, 43 yards. O.J. Howard, 3 for 46. There's just a lot of things going on. Tampa's so close to having a good team. They took that game right down to the wire, but it was Jameis Winston again that cost them the chance to win this game. The Texans, they didn't have as much success running the ball. Not really surprised. The Buccaneers have an elite run defense. Carla Hyde was limited to 27 yards on 17 carries. So everybody has their own opinion about why and who is a better player. Should they replace Winston down there in Tampa? But if you look at their defense and build around their defense, I think they could have a team that could surprise a lot of people going into next year. They just got to shore things up on the offense. Their defense is still pretty decent. So I'm not really going to throw the towel in when it comes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They just got to work some things out. DeAndre Hopkins didn't do much. He reeled in 5 catches. He was targeted 9 times, just 23 yards. So I'm not surprised because Houston plays up and down. In fact, they could have lost that game yesterday. Just amazing how close they came to losing. You give up 4 interceptions, and Houston barely pulls out a win. Keep that in mind going into the playoffs. If you want to look at a team that's consistent just like day and night, you look at the New England Patriots, 24-17 over the Buffalo Bills. We talked about their defense. They're the only defense in the league that has not given up 200 points. The Patriots have only given up 198 points on the season. They outgained. Think about how dominant their defense is. They outgained Buffalo by nearly 100 yards in the first half. Think about how good that is. Josh Allen hit some big plays against the Patriots, including a 53-yard touchdown bomb to John Brown, a 33-yard completion to Dawson Knox, who was tackled inside the 1-yard line. Meanwhile, Julian Edelman was knocked out for a while with a concussion. It's imagine people have a concussion. For the most part, they go through concussion protocol. If they're determined not to have a concussion, they get back in. But he was knocked out with a concussion, but found a way to get back in the game. But their offense sputtered they need Edelman. He returned in the fourth quarter, and he was part of the game-winning drive. I still think he had a concussion. It concluded Rex Burkhead broke into the end zone for a touchdown, and that gave the Patriots the chance to knock on the door with the number 2 seed. Remember, if they have the chance to play at Baltimore again, or even Kansas City, this is a team that can always rely on their defense. Tom Brady getting a little bit older. He's 42 years old now. He looked a little bit better yesterday. Think about how well he played. He misfired on just 7 occasions. He was 26 of 33, 271 yards for the 42-year-old. And should have had a better game, but, I mean, they had some offensive plays that were negated. Some people say bogus pass interference. But New England always benefits from that. You got to look at what they did that helped them win the game. Brady did a great job keeping the chains moving, and their defense is legit, so anytime you give them more time to rest, they're going to be even more solid. They were 7 of 14 on third downs. Compare that to Buffalo, just 2 and 11 on third downs, and that tells you how good that was. Brady's leading receiver, when they say we don't have any, well, Burkhead caught 4 passes, 77 yards. He was a top receiver. So N'Keal Harry had 2 catches, 21 yards. They got to figure out what they're going to do with the passing game, and I think they just did. Throw it to Burkhead out of the backfield. Sonny Michel had 96 yards on 21 carries. James White had 29 total yards, wasn't used very much. But run the ball on the ground, Sonny Michel. Burkhead also out of the backfield, N'Keal Harry. I think the Patriots are going to be fine because their defense is the top scoring defense in the league, the toughest to score against. I think they're always going to be very solid. Josh Allen, 13 for 26, 208 yards. And he had 7 rushes, 43 yards, too. So he played a pretty decent game. But New England gets out of there with a win, and they wrap up the division. Going back to the Saturday game, 49ers 34, Rams 31. If you think about the 49ers, they've had to score a lot of points just to win their games lately. They're going to have to turn that around, too, because you can't keep doing that. But the bright side of that is they're a team that can score a lot. If we recall what happened, the game down in New Orleans, they had to score a lot of points, and they won that with a field goal. The game against the Rams, they had to score 34 points to win that. So can they score 30 points at Seattle? They probably can. And they probably will because Seattle's banged up. Things look good for the 49ers. And you think about the Jared Goff, I mean, he's had an up and down season. Think about this guy. The Rams led by 11 points twice in the opening half, but the 49ers defense stepped up. Linebacker Fred Warner had a pick 6, could have had 2 of them. He had a great read in the play. Jared Goff has a little bit decline in his game, just my opinion. But there's something about the defense for the 49ers. Without that pick 6, they lose that game. The Rams are going in for a score, but that just shows you defense can win championships. I think the 49ers are there, but I'm not impressed with them having to score so many points to win. As well as the 49ers played, they could have lost the game also to a team that's turning the ball over. I love the way Emmanuel Sanders got the long 46-yard pass. That was a third down. It's just an amazing how the 49ers come up with their game. It's either a game-winning field goal at the end with goal. He's amazing. He had a 33-yard field goal to give San Francisco his 12th victory. If it comes down to a kick, I really like what the 49ers have to offer. And then Jalen Ramsey throwing his safety under the bus. Just being honest, though, maybe the safety was in the wrong spot. But if you're Ramsey, you got to see things and sense things and maybe go help him out too. But he's been around. He's just going to tell you the truth about that. George Kittle, he led his team in receiving, 5 catches for 79 yards and a touchdown for the 49ers. I'm really happy to see football back in Northern California. You look at what's happening with the Raiders leaving. There's going to be one team left in Northern California. That would be the San Francisco 49ers. And I hope that they have the kind of success that can propel this team deep into the playoffs. I thought coming into the season they would be a 12-4 team, and they may still be. But right now, they really are in the driver's seat looking at the number 1 seed if they can just win out. We're going to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When I come back, I'm going to talk more about the NFL and recap some of the games that happened over the weekend on this beautiful holiday weekend. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the number 1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also, I thought they'd wait till Christmas, Big C, but Big C's been out delivering presents early. You can follow, as we had told you, Big C Sports. You can follow us on Xfinity, Comcast Television. Now you can follow Big C Sports on Roku TV. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple TV. You can follow Big C Sports on other smart TVs all over the universe. I really appreciate the growth. We are doing our podcast 5 days a week. Really appreciate how things have turned out for Big C Sports. We're on every major platform that covers sports, and I really appreciate that. Big C is usually about 3,000 miles away. He's down south. I'm here on the West Coast. And to have that happen with all the competition in podcasts, and to be on one of the top podcasts on the iHeartRadio network, according to their information given to us, and then I just appreciate that, because anyone can say, oh, I like their style or I don't like their style. People like their own flavor of a cookie and their own flavor of Kool-Aid. But I just challenge people, do your show and speak extemporaneous. Don't use a script. Don't have a producer in your ear. Don't be able to look at your partner. It's like doing a show or dancing in the dark, and being able to climb the ladder on so many platforms. I really appreciate that, because we don't control those platforms, but to be invited into them, I really appreciate that opportunity too. We don't have the $1 million sound equipment, but there's a lot of shows with $1 million equipment that have been canceled. Big C Sports is still growing, so I really appreciate that. Baltimore Ravens 31, Cleveland Browns 15. And when you look at Lamar Jackson, and I know Harbaugh was talking about him today, this kid's 36 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, and a lot of the pundits said that he couldn't do it, didn't have what it takes. But think about Lamar Jackson. He threw a wide early in the fourth downs. He could throw to Ingram for a touchdown out of the backfield. He can hand off to Ingram to run out of the backfield. It's so much that you can say about Lamar Jackson, because they were telling him he couldn't play, that he wasn't good enough. He had to be a running back or a defensive back. And everybody has the right to be wrong. But at least when you're wrong, say you're wrong. And there's a lot of people jump on the bandwagon. They have the right to do that. So, and if you look at what they're doing, they have 13 wins, only 2 losses. Ingram suffered a little injury in the second half. It's a non-contact injury, which is usually terrible news, but it won't be the case this time. He's still able to play and help the Ravens in their playoff run. Also, Mark Andrews got a little bit banged up, but everybody's banged up at this time of the year. Don't let anybody tell you that they're 100% healthy. It just doesn't happen. Jackson, look at his numbers. He was 20 of 31, 228 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He also had 17 carries, 103 yards rushing. He struggled with his passing in the opening half, in the opening quarter, but got on track, found his rhythm again. This is a team that I would say in every game, they're the type of offense that can go out and get you 4 touchdowns and a field goal. When they have blowout wins, they can score in the 40s. But when you get into the playoffs, for the most part, if you score 30, you're going to win those playoff games. This is a team that can score 30, and their defense is good also. So I really appreciate how well they're playing. And when you think about what they bring to you on defense, it's a solid team that gets overshadowed by their offense, but they're very solid on defense. If you look at the other side of the ball, Baker Mayfield, Big C, you said they would not make the playoffs this year, so I'll give you props for that. Baker Mayfield, he was 20 of 33, 192 yards, and he still has more commercials than Lamar Jackson too, Big C, so I don't know if all the Madison Avenue in New York wants to advertise a guy who's not even in the playoffs over the guy who's going to be the NFL's MVP. They can Google it and look at their own numbers. Odell Beckham Jr. caught one of Mayfield's touchdowns. Also drew an interference flag in the end zone, an uncatchable pass. Beckham also had some negative moments, a taunting penalty. I mean, everybody has their own emotions. Got into a little spat with Freddie Kitchens, but that's okay. At least he's honest. I know some people have their thoughts about Beckham, but you can't tell me the guy doesn't play hard. He just has a quarterback that can't get on the ball all the time, even though they don't run Nick Chubb enough. Think about this. The Browns didn't want to run the ball a lot. Nick Chubb, I think he's one of the best running backs in the league. He had 15 carries. You got to give them more than that, especially if you want to win games. I know they want to make Baker Mayfield the story of their football team, and they decided to do that. And if you have Odell Beckham Jr., anytime he makes the headlines, they're going to say, oh, something's wrong with Odell Beckham. He's talking to his coach about trying to win. But that's what winning players do. They make a lot of noise. They always tell you what's on their mind. They want to do that because it's being honest. So when you think about what hurts the Browns this year, I think Big C has talked about it a lot. Nick Chubb, 15 carries, 45 yards. Kareem Hunt did a lot of the work for the receivers out of the backfield too. Had 4 passes for 33 yards. But you just got to run players more. I think most running backs get into their groove when they touch the ball about 20 times a game. The Atlanta Falcons 24, the Jacksonville Jaguars 12. And when you think about it, when a team hears that its head coach is going to not return the following season, it can light a match under you. The Falcons got the win in San Francisco because Julio Jones leaned back over the goal line, and they carried it into this win against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You look at Ryan, he threw the ball a lot, maybe too many times if you look at what's happened throughout the season. He was 32 of 45, 384 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Yeah, people say that's a lot of yards, but you got to run the ball more going into next year. The Jaguars, they were able to be competitive. They had a chance to win that game, but the Falcons just found a way to pull it out. Devontae Freeman did all he could with the scoring. He rushed for 53 yards and a touchdown on 13 carries. He caught 9 passes for 74 yards, so they used him a lot. Leonard Fournette did not have the same sort of outing, and he was just 15 rushes and not a lot of yards with him, 71 yards. I mean, that's a lot, but you still got to give him the ball more. Gardner Minshew was woefully poor against the defense, going 13 of 31, 181 yards. The kid, the rifle slinger out of Washington State, they found a way to bottle him up, and he hasn't been the same since they figured him out. So we'll see how his career progresses down the line. Also, for the New Orleans Saints, I'm saying New England, but how about them Saints? The New Orleans Saints, 38-28. It's a game that they probably could have won easier, but maybe not. The Titans have been playing pretty good football down the stretch, but this game's not going to mean much for the Titans because of it's a stain on them. They had so much potential, the Tennessee Titans, but it's hard to beat the Saints. If you do, though, it's easier to beat them on the road. So the Derrick Henry, obviously, when you think about him, they rested some players. I think Henry's just one of the best running backs in the NFL. You got to see him on the field. Oftentimes, more than not. That's my opinion. A.J. Brown scored on a 41 and 49-yard touchdowns, and that featured horrible tackling. It's like sometimes players don't have the same type of moxie or attitude in some games. But I want to go over to Drew Brees. Think about Michael Thomas. They had some conversations because things weren't happening. They were off. I mean, they were just off for a while. But Drew Brees found them, and Thomas had 12 passes. I mean, it's amazing. He broke Marvin Harrison's single-season reception record. He appears to be on his 11th catch to score a touchdown. The replay showed that he was just shy of the goal line, I guess, depending on the angle. Didn't happen, but he came back to him. Drew, as a professional, came right back to his main guy and found him anyway for a touchdown. Thomas, as Big C feels, is the best receiver in the NFL. 12 catches, 136 yards, and a touchdown. It's amazing how that team has the ability to they can strike fire. Kamara had a touchdown for the first time in many, many moons. Drew Brees, he had a poor start when you think about it. He was just off. He finished with 13 of 17, 131 yards, and 2 touchdowns. In the second half, overall his numbers, he was 27 of 38, 279 yards, and a couple of scores. So he was lucky to get away with not throwing multiple interceptions, but they were still off a little bit. Before what's going on in that game, to conclude the outcome of it, you look at Jared Cook scored 2 touchdowns, caught 3 passes, 84 yards, but he also drew an interference flag. So the Saints got a big win. Still a lot to finish up. You look at Tannehill on the other side of the ball, 17 of 27, 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. Without Henry, Deion Lewis handled 2/3 of the workload. He had a lackluster showing, 68 yards on 15 carries. Also caught one pass for 19 yards. And I know everybody has their own opinion about who the best players are on a team. If Henry's able to play, you got to play him. I know everybody's banged up this time of year. Don't want to make any excuses for anybody. A.J. Brown, he caught a 34-yard touchdown pass, but he only saw 2 targets. This is something about the Saints. They got to just get things lined up for the playoffs. They can't play. I thought they played a poor game, especially first half, but they turned it around in the second half. They got to play better in the playoffs. Indianapolis Colts, 38-6 over the Carolina Panthers. Feels like the Carolina Panthers have maybe given up on the season. And when you give up 38 points and you score 6, it's just not a good showing. But they know their season's over. You think about the Colts scored on another punt return by Hines in the second half. The Colts, in fact, they tallied 21 of their 38 points on punt returns. That's incredible. Special teams does win, but it makes it misleading that they won so lopsidedly. It was really special teams. Think about despite having 3 fewer possessions to work with, Marlon Mack hit the century mark, 95 rushing yards on 16 carries, almost 100 yards for him. Would have eclipsed that plateau, but they just played well enough to win against a team that, in my opinion, has given up, especially since firing Coach Rivera. And you don't want to say an NFL team has given up, but if you look at the Carolina Panthers they have, Jacoby Brissett didn't have to do a lot of work. He looked pretty healthy, but in the first half, he didn't have a great game. He was 14 of 27, 119 yards, and one of his incompletions was a deep bomb to an open receiver, but it was overthrown. I think at the end of the day, he's still a little bit shy from standing in the pocket too long because of the knee injury that he had earlier in the season. T.Y. Hilton did not appear 100% either. Nobody's 100% now. 3 passes, 26 yards. But everybody knows it's just a matter of time when you get into the playoffs. You got to play. Christian McCaffrey, these teams are not going to the playoffs, but they still got to play for next year. Christian McCaffrey broke his own record. Congratulations to him. He didn't give up at all. 15 rushes, 119 yards receiving. 15 of his targets, 119 yards receiving. This guy's amazing. He did not do much as a rusher. He had 54 yards on 13 carries. But when you look at what he did overall, 150 yards total offense, whether it's passing or running, McCaffrey is really the guy that stirs the drink for them. Despite the blowout loss, Breyer wasn't horrible. He was 27 of 44, 24 yards and 3 interceptions. But this is a game where players are just playing to stay healthy. That's my opinion. And when you think about opinions, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they fall to the New York Jets, 16-10. Mike Tomlin said it's not the same without this quarterback situation worked out. They don't have Big Ben, and they just have a lot of issues with the quarterback. Devin Hodges will be the starter going into Week 16. And when they play, Mason Rudolph, he's injured again, has a bum shoulder. Everything fell on the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they can still get into the playoffs maybe if some things work their way. It appeared at that point the Steelers would have the control of a number 6 seed, but who knows what's going to happen now. Hodges was 11 of 17, just 84 yards, and he had 2 interceptions. Rudolph was 14 of 20, 129 yards. This is a team that even if they get into the playoffs, they're probably going to get knocked out in the first game because they just don't have a lot of healthy people. Sam Darnold, he was 16 of 26, 183 yards and 2 touchdowns. He made some mistakes, had an interception dropped on a poor deep shot in the opening quarter, but they were able to get the win. And it was a strip sack that he gave up. Darnold's always turning the ball over. Look for him to play much better next year. He has to, if the Jets are going to make any room. Le'Veon Bell, able to get his advantage on the Steelers with the victory. He did not do much on the field, but he did rush 72 yards on 25 carries. And Bell also caught 4 passes, 21 yards receiving out of the backfield. The Giants 41, the Redskins 35. Say it ain't so. This Giants game is not a playoff game coming up against the Eagles, but it will be a playoff game that has playoff implications when you look at what's going to happen. If they can find a way, and this is weird to say it, if the Giants can knock off the Eagles in the Meadowlands and the Redskins fall at home to the Cowboys, would you believe the New York Giants still being a team that can determine who gets into the playoffs? Is that amazing? as all the talk about Eli Manning being his last year with the New York Giants, they can still make some noise and cause the playoff change. They can really they stop New England from winning, going an undefeated season. But if they get the win over the Eagles, man, you just got to give Eli Manning, you got to tip the hat, maybe some celebrations in New York City if that happens. I know a lot of people want that to happen. I want to get to a game that really made a big statement for the NFL yesterday. And I know everybody was talking about Dallas Cowboys are a better team, that Dallas is going to go on and win the NFC East. That did not happen yesterday. Can the Cowboys come back and make some noise? They have to. This is a team they were so hopeful. They were so hopeful, but Philadelphia decided they would spoil the Cowboys celebration. But we'll talk more about that as we get into that game. And I know that so many people are talking about whether it's Dak Prescott. Is he really worth is he a player that you can count on to win your football games? I think yes. So we'll see what happens when they play at the Redskins over the weekend. So the Giants 41-35 over the Redskins. When you think about what happened, despite losing out, this is a team that, to me, it might be one of the more watched games in the NFL. Because if you get Eli to start, and there's no reason not to have him. I mean, Jones did not have his full arsenal in the game. Evan Ingram was sidelined, didn't matter. Caden Smith had a big game, catching 6 passes, 35 yards, 2 touchdowns. But this, to me, is all about, can you bring in Eli Manning and have him play against Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles? And if they can knock them out of the playoffs, who knows? I can't wait to see what happens. Barkley, likely, he idolized Adrian Peterson. He was growing up. Adrian Peterson just a stud. He was limited 36 yards on 15 carries. Peterson found the end zone. But obviously, when you have a player that goes back to the glory days at Oklahoma and how he was All-American, just love watching Adrian Peterson still doing his thing as a young man and want to see him have more success. Haskins was 12 of 15, 133 yards, 2 touchdowns, replaced by Case Keenum. Also had problems torching the Giants. He was 16 of 22, 158 yards. But if you think about it, he did a pretty decent job. Both teams are not going anywhere. Mostly they're just trying to stay healthy. I'm looking forward to seeing Eli Manning starting with the New York Giants against the Philadelphia Eagles. That has to be the case. I would love to see that happen. The Dolphins 38, the Bengals 35. And, Swaggy Fitzpatrick, what can you say about him? Everybody loves to look at how he plays. He plays with just a passion. He's a veteran player. On the opening drive, took him down the field. Ryan hit a couple of passes, and Allen Hurns was 2 for 41 yards. And I mean, just the Dolphins built up a 21-6 halftime lead. This is the team that everybody thought would go winless throughout the season, and that didn't happen. They showed a lot of moxie, and they continue to win games. Fitzpatrick, 31 of 52, 419 yards. Yes, Fitzpatrick, 419 yards. And this is a team that's not going anywhere, but I love to see that they're trying. They're not trying to tank to get a higher round draft pick. If you look at what happened in that game, the Dolphins, from a team that was picked to be 0-16 to get another win, I really appreciate them. Dalton completed 33 of 56 passes, 496 yards, 4 touchdowns. Joe Mixon had 50 yards, 21 carries. The Broncos 27, the Lions 17. And say it ain't so, but the Broncos are trying to win some football games. They're playing a little bit better. Locke completed 25 of 33 passes, 192 yards. Get rid of those ugly orange uniforms. They were all orange with the blue helmets. We don't need that. But Locke, again, 25 of 33, 192 yards, and a touchdown with no interceptions. He was solid, not great, but he was solid. Lindsey ran 109 yards, 19 carries. And then I just appreciate how they played. Blah was 12 of 24, 117 yards and a touchdown. Golladay caught 6 passes, 66 yards and a touchdown. And Kerryon Johnson had 42 yards on 10 carries. And then the Raiders get their last win as an Oakland Raider team down in Los Angeles. Beat the Chargers 24-17. This is a team that they had a lot going for them. Carr had a decent game, 56-yard touchdown throw to Hunter Renfrow. He had a great game yesterday down in Carson, California. 25 of 30, 291 yards and a touchdown. I'm thinking Carr got Renfro back from injury. Renfro looked great. First appearance of the week since week 12. He had 7 catches, 107 yards. The Raiders still, they're kind of an emotional team. Can they get in the playoffs? If they win at Denver, some things happen. Maybe they can. Melvin Gordon didn't get much involved in this game because of early constraint deficit. He rushed for just 15 yards on 9 carries. He managed to score twice, and that's for his fantasy players. But think about it, 6 receptions, 32 yards. He may help a little bit for his fantasy numbers, but not for him as a player. I want to finish out NFL talk on the biggest game of the day, probably, outside of the one in Seattle. But their biggest game is going to be next week when they host the 49ers. The Dallas Cowboys, they fall on the road to the Philadelphia Eagles. So, and we still don't have a team that's clinched the division yet, so we don't know who's going to win this division. Despite injuries to Ertz, Lane Johnson, his regular receivers, Carson Wentz, still had a great game yesterday. Misfired 9 times. He was 31 of 40, 319 yards and a touchdown. He also did some damage on the ground. He scrambled around 6 times, 22 yards. And I think he played pretty good football. Miles Sanders for the Philadelphia Eagles, who was instrumental in their victory. He had a great game. 79 yards in rushes on 20 carries. And he caught 5 passes, 77 yards receiving. I want to get on what happened with the Cowboys. The Cowboys, they had trouble sustaining drives, especially they did this all year, especially on the road. Just 3 of 14 on third downs. Prescott, he was not healthy. So I'm going to say you can't always make excuses, but they were shooting the guy up. He's a better quarterback than he played yesterday. They also had 6 drop passes. He was just not consistent because if you're numbed up, you can't throw the ball as well as you should. His deepest completion was 41-yarder to Michael Gallup, who actually was underthrown, but he would have scored had the ball been placed better. But again, try shooting your ribs up and going out and playing. Prescott was 25 of 44, 265 yards. Did not look great, but again, the guy was shot up with a needle so he could play. Watch North Dallas 40 if you understand what NFL players go through so they can play better. So we'll see what happens. They can still go on the road and win. Randall Cobb, 5 catches, 73 yards. I don't even know what to say about Cooper. He had 12 targets, but he's just not on the road. He seems to disappear. I don't know what it is about Cooper. Elliott had success against the Eagles, but not consistent success. He was also banged up. He had just 47 yards on 13 carries. He had 7 catches for 37 yards too. You got to run Zeke at least 20 times. But if you're banged up, you can't really do that. So we'll see what happens if the Dallas Cowboys still have a chance to get into the playoffs. Only if they win the NFC East, and they got to beat Washington on the road, and they got to have the Giants beat the Eagles. Arizona Cardinals get a win 27-13 over Seattle. Beast mode, he's in town. Will he play? Will they sign him? I believe they should. Just for him knowing the playbook, just for him having 2 Super Bowl experiences, just for him bringing something to them. He's not banged up. But can you take a guy that hasn't played NFL football in the whole year and run him? You don't want him to pull a hamstring. I mean, maybe you can leave him in for blocking for Russell Wilson, but I don't think you're going to have him run for 100 yards. But wouldn't that be great? If Beast Mode comes in and runs for 100 yards, I mean, that would be absolutely amazing. But everybody knows the running game belonged to Kenyon Drake. 166 yards and 2 scores on 24 carries. The guy was amazing. Also 3 receptions for 18-yard receiving. Larry Fitzgerald, loved watching him play. Caught 4 passes, 48 yards and a touchdown. And it appeared to have a second score, but it got away from him. And we already looking forward to the San Francisco game and the Seahawks game coming up on Sunday. And in the Emerald City. It should be just a madhouse. The 12th man will definitely be in place. I'm still giving the 49ers a slight edge just because they seem a little bit healthier. Tonight, the Green Bay Packers versus the Minnesota Vikings. Can Kirk Cousins end the Monday night jinx? We'll discount double check going there and get a win. We'll see what happens. I want to say you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com on the apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television. Now and launching. We are now on Roku TV. You can follow Big C Sports on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Just go to the iHeartRadio app, and you link it with Roku TV on your device and pull up Big C Sports Podcast. Really appreciate the growth and the work with Big C Sports and Big C over the years, and I'm looking forward to a lot of growth in 2020. College football, Bahamas Bowl in Nassau, Bahamas, Buffalo 31, Charlotte 9. The Frisco Bowl in Texas. You had the Texas Bowl in Frisco. Kent State 51, Utah State 41 in the highest scoring game. In Atlanta, Georgia, you have North Carolina, A&T 64, Alcorn State 44. I thought I was watching a basketball game. They would score so many points in that game. New Mexico Bowl in beautiful Albuquerque, New Mexico. San Diego State 48, Central Michigan 11. In the Cure Bowl, Orlando, Florida, Liberty 23, Georgia Southern 16. In the Boca Raton Bowl in Florida, FAU 52, SMU 23. That could be called the acronym bowl for FAU, Florida Atlantic University, and Southern Methodist University. Camille Bowl, Montgomery, Alabama, Arkansas State 34. FIU, Florida International 26. The Las Vegas Bowl, say it ain't so, the Pac-12 with a blowout win. So much talk, Big C, of us saying that Boise State could maybe win the Pac-12. Chris Peterson going out on a winning note, 38-7 over Boise State out of the Mountain West. I was surprised by the score, but not surprised by the result. New Orleans Bowl, Appalachian State 31. UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham 27. And we have the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa, Florida today. It was University of Central Florida 48, Marshall 25. And so that's your thoughts on college football and the bowl games. A lot of more big games coming up. Tonight's Monday night NBA schedule, Big C style. Atlanta at Cleveland. Chicago will be at Orlando. Philadelphia at Detroit. Toronto at Indiana. Washington at New York. In New York City, you will have the Utah Jazz at the Miami Heat. San Antonio Spurs at Memphis Grizzlies. Denver's at Phoenix. Houston's at Sacramento. New Orleans is at Portland. And Minnesota is at Golden State. So that's your thoughts for Big C's NBA action. I want to close out tonight's show on a beautiful holiday. And as we do Big C's Friday Night Lights, I want to just congratulate St. John Bosco of Southern California. They're out of Bellflower. They finished ranked number 1 in the country, according to a lot of the high school polls all over the country, with a 49-28 win over number 12 De La Salle in California. And then St. Thomas Aquinas with a win over, they were the Florida champions, and they beat a beautiful high school, St. Louis High School, Honolulu, Hawaii, snapping their 38-game win streak. In the Geico Bowl down in Las Vegas at Bishop Gorman High School, that was 35-19. And so congratulations to St. Thomas Aquinas. They moved up in the polls as well. And also in the Geico Bowl, St. Thomas finished the season at 15-0. But the 38-game win streak was snapped for St. Louis, the Hawaii State champion. They had not lost a game since 2017. So when you win your state and you got to go across the country to play another team, you know, everybody loves ranking teams and giving players their chance to do that. But I just think high school Friday Night Lights, we always do it for Big C Sports, and I really appreciate giving a lot of the teams just a chance to know that we appreciate them and will always pay homage to them. And the high school kids, many players won't go on and play any more games, but I'm going to run down quickly Big C's. I'm going to do top 20 this time. Number 1, St. John Bosco, Bellflower, California, 13-0. Number 2, Mater Dei Santa Ana, 12-1. Number 3, St. Thomas Aquinas, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 15-0. Number 4, North Shore, Houston, Texas, 15-1. Number 5, St. Francis Academy, Baltimore, Maryland, 11-1. Fall at the number 6, Duncanville, Texas. They are 15-1. They lost to North Shore. Number 7, Marietta, Georgia. They beat Eastside Catholic of Washington, the state of Washington, 53-14. and that's the Washington State champion Marietta finished 14-2. Number 8, IMG Academy out of Bradenton, Florida. They finished 9-1. Number 10, Dutch Fork out of Irmo, South Carolina, 14-0-1. Number 10, Chandler, Arizona, finished 13-0. Number 11, Pinkerton Central out of Ohio, 14-1. Followed by number 12, De La Salle, Concord, California, 12-2. The only losses, St. John Bosco and St. Thomas Aquinas. Not bad when you lose to number 1 and number 3 in the country. Loudness out of Valdosta, Georgia, 14-1. Number 14, St. Louis, Honolulu, Hawaii, 12-1. Their only loss in the last 3 years to St. Thomas Aquinas out of Florida, 35-19. Number 15 in Big C's Friday Night Lights final rankings. Number 15, Katy, Texas, 12-1. Number 16, St. Joseph Prep out of Philadelphia. Followed by number 17, Kroner Canyon out of Draper, Utah, 14-0. Number 18, Our Lady of Good Counsel, Only, Maryland, 9-3. Number 19, Archbishop Ramel out of Moultrie, Louisiana, 13-0. In number 20, Carroll of Southlake, Texas, finished 13-1, and that's Big C's Friday Night Lights. As we always say, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. As I would say, Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe? I know you're out traveling. I want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas. I'll be doing an abbreviated show for Christmas Eve as I'll be traveling myself. But I want to tell you, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, you can follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, as we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.